start soon.
Reminded everybody.
Let me check to see if anybody said they can't join.
Just double check my email in case there's any issue.
Your students.
You got joined for sure.
No big deal. Either way.
It's okay, they'll join.
Okay. All right. Are you done recording?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, once it, yeah.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to another Satsang. Let's start with 10 minutes of meditation together. I would suggest picking either self-inquiry or surrender, and try one of those for a little while, and we can discuss what it's like.
ఇక్కడ పెట్టద్దని అందుకే అన్నాను వాటర్ పడుతుందని అక్కడ పెట్టినాను. ఇప్పుడు ఇదంతా మళ్ళీ నేను తుడుచుకోవాలి కదా మాంసెస్లు. చెప్పినప్పుడు ఎందుకు చెప్పానో వినాలి ప్రేరణ. వాటర్ ఇక్కడ ఉంటుందని మళ్ళీ నేను పడుకోవాలి కదా, ఇక్కడ సింక్లో పెట్టమని చెప్పి.
Mute. Please mute.
All right. So, before I ask you how your experiences were, that I just want to make a note that I probably made before, which is that, even though I, signaled we should meditate for 10 minutes, of course you can feel free, and should feel free to keep practicing the whole time, because anything I say is really only a prompt to practice ultimately. You keep the practice going, that's ideal, frankly. I also want to say something which occurred to me, which is, in talking about karma yoga yesterday, karma yoga says, I'm going to do the process, but I'm giving up the outcome. But really, if you look at it very carefully, right, if you break down the time units of karma yoga, right, and you look at it shorter and shorter time intervals, process and result blur, So eventually, even any process, right, is going to have, the next part of the process is the result of the earlier part of the process. Your effort this second is going to result in what happens a second from now. So if you think of karma yoga in that respect, then ultimately, you're going to see more and more and more detachment even in the process part, and it will kind of merge into surrender eventually, if that makes sense. Just to keep in mind, like that's it's really a stream towards it, actually. So anyone want to talk about what the experience is? Or you can talk about, actually, what your experiences have been over the last day or two, generally speaking, or anything else that comes up.
Can I start?
Sure, please.
I'd like to open a new Pandora box.
Please. Those are the best kind.
I just wanted to ask about spiritual awakening processes. For example, a Kundalini awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that those processes are also a scenery.
Yeah.
And we just witness, it's not me. it's just happening on its own. But I wonder what is the perspective of, say, a self-inquiry based approach towards processes such as these, which are very real,
Yeah.
which is very lived, real experience.
I mean, I think the answer is that, right, a big part again of the quest for moksha is quieting the mind, basically, and that requires any number of possible techniques, and a kundalini stimulated mind might be more peaceful, might be more able to concentrate, might be more energized. So that's the way it would interface, I think, in the sense that, if your energies are in a certain distribution, like even in your body, then your body functions better. If your energies are in a certain distribution, then your mind functions better. And you can then use that capacity, to inquire, right? So if the energy is more centered in, your, I'm not super familiar with Kundalini to be honest, but if it is in the higher chakras, right, you're going to be able to use that energy more effectively to inquire, basically, than if they're at a lower level. That's how I would say what the correspondence is. See, the techniques are really, again, all very simple, right? I mean, in a way, every time I'm going to be repeating myself because the techniques are very, very simple. It's always just our resistance to it that's at issue, and how to overcome that resistance. And the answer is, slowly and with care, essentially. But, if people have doubts about, anything, right, about, why we believe in this in the first place, feel free to raise them. That includes people on Zoom too, by the way, if there's anyone on Zoom. I don't know if there's anyone on Zoom.
I have a practice-related question.
Tell me.
I've asked this before, but it's coming up again. So, in surrender, we ignore everything, but at the same time, I sense there's a vividness and a sharpness that kicks in as well. So there's this aspect of ignoring and rejecting or dismissing things, when it's not the right word, but ignoring.
Yeah.
But then there's also this heightened concentration and seeing intricacies and vividness that I wouldn't have seen before. And I'm just wondering if you have any comments on that. Are we meant to actually be hyper aware of everything but just not getting lost in it? Or is being hyper aware of everything mean that I'm attending to things by the fact that I'm hyper aware of it?
Well, I mean, I don't think in surrender you're trying to be hyper aware, but I think what happens is that, we're usually lost in habitual modes of thought. So habit makes us see things as we saw them before, right? We see the same thing, through the lens of memory, basically. So we don't notice new details, right? Because we're along those channels. If we're surrendering, then we're essentially breaking. We're breaking those mental habits. We're deviating from mental habits. Okay, and in that sense, in that space, you may find vividness come up as a result. It's like like a child seeing things, with less conditioning, less habit that way, essentially.
It's almost like if we see a tree normally, we just think tree.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we look at it, you see the textures and the...
Exactly. Right. I mean, and your image of a tree is exactly. It's not just the word, but it's all your memories of trees before, or memories of seeing this particular tree before. Oh yeah, that. I already know what that is.
Yeah.
So you don't pay attention, right? But in surrender, you're deliberately breaking the usual, absorption into that kind of thought.
Yeah, because it definitely does feel like there's an aliveness to everything that wasn't necessarily there before.
Yeah, because another way of looking at thoughts too is, thoughts are a dream you dream.
Yeah. Right?
So when you are ignoring thoughts, you're waking up from these dreams.
Yeah.
Essentially. And into what are you waking? You're waking into, a more open awareness, basically.
So when you were doing the practice intensely, you were becoming more alert to the environment aspect.
It can go that way. At some level, it's different things happen different times. It's not always more hyper vivid at all times, because one can go deep into states where one is ignoring everything truly, and things become really blurry in background. So I wouldn't say there's any rule like that, but it can be like that,
Yeah.
So, and that is something which, it's an irony, because again, people are often thinking like, how can I, like, I don't know, listen to a piece of music or read a book or something like that while I'm surrendering? Of course, first of all, in surrender, the first criterion is you don't demand that any particular activity be done, right? So you can't say, I'm surrendering, but I have to be reading this book. It's I'm surrendering, and if the book is read, it's read. If it's not read, it's not read. But it can be read, and if it is read, if it happens to be read, you will often notice that you may actually notice more in the book than you would have if you weren't, because when you're not in surrender, you're again traveling like these like ruts in the mind, like these already traveled paths. You're just traveling them again and again and again, So you may find that like, oh, I'm actually listening to this piece of music in a different way than I used to. I'm noticing things I wouldn't have otherwise noticed because I'm not following down the usual routes in my mind. But again, there's no rule about paying attention to that things in the physical environment say will become more vivid, because there's definitely something as well to, and this is a very multi-layered verse, but there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita which says, to the person of wisdom, the world, the waking world, he's asleep to the waking world, he or she is asleep to the waking world, and they are awake to the sort of world to which everyone else is asleep, basically. So what does this mean? I mean, that means, the point is, it could mean a lot of things, but essentially there's the subjective world, the world of the subject, to which most people are asleep. They are ignoring that. They're just looking at the objects, and that subjective world is what the wise person is aware of, basically. But, it could also mean, in an interesting way, that if they are paying attention to the outside world, that they may notice things other people may not notice. There's an interesting, I don't know when this comes to mind, but there's a story about a set of brain teasers, okay? Some 25 brain teasers that some scientists came up with a few decades ago. And most people could solve, I don't know, maybe like 3 of them, okay? And then even very smart people, they were getting maybe like 6 or 7 or 8 of them at most. And they gave it to some Zen monk, okay? Who knows what his spiritual status was, but the point is that he was looking at these questions, and initially he wasn't able to solve any of them, 0. And then some time passed, and then suddenly, like, answers started coming to him, and he eventually solved like way more than anybody else. So what happened there? I think the answer is that he was probably in something like a surrender kind of mode, where other capacities have a potential to come online, but creativity can come online. It's not that it's guaranteed to come online, but it can, because the mind is not stuck in a rut.
Yes, a lot of innovation happens.
Exactly. And Ramana says this too. Ramana says...
Also, you have so much clarity.
Exactly.
And you articulate very well. Don't have to think of it, no fear.
Yeah, at least it can be that way. Ramana says, right, all the great innovations, they come in moments when the mind is deeply silent.
Yes.
So there's that as well, right? These are all techniques as well to cultivate silence.
I have a question. So as someone new to this experience,
Yeah, tell me.
There are different practices and all of that out there, and so what was it about this that you connected with that got you into this?
These are the practices that Ramana Maharshi recommends, and they're also the distillation, basically, of Vedanta. So the fundamental idea is there is an illusion that creates a sense of identification with the person. This illusion has to be pierced if one wants to experience the truth. And the truth is that one is a timeless, eternal, perfect consciousness, essentially. So you want to experience that, not just hear it in words. And what basically prevents this from being seen is the set of mental movements that are tied to various desires and fears. So the essential message of the scriptures, which Ramana has so beautifully distilled, is that the way to pierce this illusion and essentially stop the workings of the attachments is either A, to steadfastly surrender, meaning ignore everything as illusion, and systematically keep one's willpower in restraint. And this will allow one to experience more and more peace in this practice, because the basic idea is that one's essence is essentially peaceful. It's mental motion that causes agitation. So if you come to a point where you can concentrate in a way that gives you inner peace without having to search for it through outer objects, then you're steadily going to turn that way. You're going to care less and less about finding happiness outside. You're going to care more and more about finding happiness through this practice. So through that way, the attachments will weaken, and eventually the supports of the illusion will collapse. The other possibility is self-inquiry. Self-inquiry says that the illusion hides behind the notion of I. I is this amorphous word that everyone uses continuously, right? But actually nobody knows what it means. And so the basic idea is, if you look very, very carefully about where this I is coming from, you're going to undermine the illusion that way. You're going to undermine the attachments. So that's why these two are the basic methods that are recommended to get to the heart of things. But they rest on a base of other stuff. Like I said, the mind has to be sufficiently capable of this kind of concentration, which means that the attachments themselves have to be already have been managed to a certain extent through various measures, right? Like maybe Kundalini or other kinds of meditation or yoga or therapy or any other number of things. You have to have enough motivation, basically, and enough capacity to pursue this. But that's why, essentially. Sure. Sure.
So, Akilesh, I just wanted to run by you the way I've been practicing surrender. And for the most part, I seem to find surrender more easy to do nowadays. Although it flips into self-inquiry sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
When I get very bored of surrender or when the thoughts are too overwhelming, then I use self-inquiry to completely flip away. And then I try to fall back into surrender again in terms of not engaging with the different thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things is, when I'm disengaging from thoughts, right, I'm withdrawing my attention from anything in experience. I'm withdrawing, then often the thing pops up is, what am I resting as? What am I resting as?
Mm-hmm.
And initially I was focusing on this feeling of I amness.
Mm-hmm.
I am, right? And then I was wondering if I should, today I was trying to even stay away from that I amness as perhaps an alertness in which I'm looking to disengage. So either I'm disengaging from thought, or I'm disengaging from stillness, or I'm bringing in an alertness looking for something to disengage from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that alertness is the closest I get to not objectifying anything. Otherwise,
Yeah, sure.
I feel otherwise I'm resting somewhere here. Right?
Yeah, sure,
I'm in
exactly.
the day. So is that sort of the right
Yeah,
direction?
absolutely,
of it?
100%. I mean, basically, it sounds like you're saying that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're continuously moving
Yes.
the awareness.
Yes.
Yeah, which is good, exactly. So because whatever it is you're experiencing, whatever it may be, whatever it is a thought.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's some kind of experience. And so we want to not be lost in that, whatever it is, and so it's only through continuous awareness, essentially, reinvocation of that awareness over and over and over again, that we wake ourselves up from whatever the current experience is. And it's that movement, that's the movement away from objects. So that's the arrow pointing, towards something. So it's not that you're, precisely, you're not resting somewhere. The resting is the continuous movement. That's the rest.
That's the rest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I find both are same. Like surrender is more like identifying myself from everything. And self-inquiry is one by one. I say, yeah, I'm not this, I'm not that. But this one is a collectively, completely.
Yeah.
I am finally you want to identify from everything and be standalone.
That's right.
That's
well,
all
well,
the goal, right?
And you want it, well, when, I would say yes, except that I want to say, the standing alone, will that happen? See, whatever it is that is standing must continue to be penetrated. And what will remain is not that you stand alone, it's that the whole notion of standing will be deconstructed.
Yes.
It's at the end at the end of the road is not a hard object that you get to, like, oh, finally, this is me. No. It has to be that the entire notion of that kind of object dissolves. So that's the standing, and there's no question of standing then.
It's not standing alone. I have no impact on anything and
Yes.
everything, and I am like nothing is me, like that kind of a feeling.
Well, yeah, so
I no image, no identification. This thought is not mine, this is not mine, my passion is not mine.
Yes.
Or like collectively everything going on is also not mine, and I am not that, like that.
Correct, right, and then whatever is there, and then you have to keep pushing, right? Because you do that, you're going to be in some kind of state of stillness, relatively.
Yes.
And even that stillness has to be ignored, because, again, see, the implicit question in surrender is always, I'm trying to ignore the world, and I'm trying to re-invoke awareness, right?
Yes.
What is the world, and what is awareness, right? Essentially, there's an underlying self-inquiry question in surrender. Where are you?
I turned it down to 68. I know it's cool, but
Sorry,
we'll sleep
could
better.
you mind muting yourself? Sorry.
Please mute.
Sorry. We should be able to mute everybody somehow. It's not working.
Mute everybody?
I mute everybody, I muted everybody.
How come?
I muted all. See, here, see here. It's a mute all. I did that. Yes, everybody is muted.
I mustn't join that.
I do not know. They may, like when the question means I want them to have the ability to unmute.
Yeah, you can pick a thing, mute everybody on entry option.
That also I did.
That way you don't have to mute the new person who
yeah,
joins.
yeah, that also I did.
You did? Okay, then it's okay. Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So,
The stillness.
yeah. So even in the stillness, right? There's further to go, is the point, right? One just keeps surrendering and until there's clarity about what you are, or until surrender is taken away from you. See, the practice, basically.
Yeah, I don't even know whether it's a stillness.
Yeah,
I am in that stage.
exactly. So,
I cannot even
Well-
say stillness or anything, but I feel that I'm completely disconnected from everything.
right. So, but you're still there as someone who's disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are the disconnected one now. That means that you're still there in some form. So what is that, right? So I mean, that would be in the inquiry form of the question. Who am I in this stage? Right? You're right. As things become stiller and stiller and stiller, it becomes harder and harder and harder to even say what it means that I am here still. But one is here still somehow.
But I won't even have the awareness that I am there. That's a kind of a feeling. Like I am there, disconnected, nothing is there. Like still, if I'm fully aware, it's like a zombie stage where I cannot even inquire myself.
Well,
And if I am aware, it's just like anesthesia, and not anesthesia where I am admitted in the hospital and everything is hasty, or where like
then I would just be a little bit careful, because that might mean something more along the lines of a sleepiness again, because it's like
not sleepiness alone. I am
See-
able to talk really very well. I'm able to innovate well. Creativity comes up.
Where are you in the situation is the question.
I am there. Whatever I have to do, I'm doing the best very well. That like I don't have to think at all. Things flow like that. That's a kind of a stage, and I am able to talk really very well. Not to think anything, and it comes like that, and everything is correct. Kind of a feeling.
I mean,
Yeah.
see, is it lasting forever or not is the question.
Yeah, it won't last forever.
Exactly. So that means there's something which is still there.
Yes, correct.
Right? So there's something which is not fully understood. So that's why, if you can, right, there is still a you, even in this experience, of everything flowing. You know, if things are flowing beautifully like that, it is very nice, no doubt about it. But to the extent that you can, you want to say, well, you want to inquire, or you want to, or if you're surrendering, then you want to try to pull your attention away from all of this. There's still something there. You see, there's still an experience happening, and you have to differentiate yourself from that experience.
Yeah.
That's you're very subtly there.
Yeah, like subtly there. I have no intelligence to do things on my own. Things are flowing. That's a kind of a situation. If I feel that I can dig in further, if I'm fully aware, I can dig in further. I'm like a kind of a stage where things are happening and I'm seeing it. That's it.
It's good. No, that's really good. I mean, it's right. I mean,
If I am fully aware, I can question. I'm not even like, I don't know what is happening like that. But I may be able to do things well.
Well, see, but that's see. I mean, so it's then okay. So yeah, that's
and later if you feel that okay, that I was in that stage, kind of a feeling.
Right.
Later only I realized I'm not able.
Yeah. That's fine. Look, that's good. That's a good thing then. You know, I wouldn't worry about it too much. As soon as you're out of that stage, come back to the practice. That's basically what has to happen. Yeah, I mean, it sounds flimsy. In some ways, it sounds good. It sounds good, you know. But you should just be aware that, you know, obviously you are there in a subtle form in some sense.
Yes.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to return.
Yeah, correct.
Returning. So that means you're there to begin with. It means it's a thought, but it's a very good thought. I will certainly say that.
Yeah, I know. That's it. But it will come just like that. It's not that I create.
Yeah, exactly.
I deliberately trigger it. I don't say, this thought, you go away. This thought, you go away. Nothing. I don't put any effort. Right? And something, someplace, some things triggers. Like that.
Yeah, no. It sounds like a flow experience. Sounds like a kind of glimpsey experience. Yeah. I mean, that's good. That's really good. I mean, you know, as soon as you're out of it, just restart the practice.
So, another technique-related question, Akilesh. In the practice of yoga, right, especially when you've done all the auxiliary practices, oftentimes you're asked to stay focused on your Agnya Chakra to the exclusion of thought. Which means whenever there's a thought, just ignore it and bring your attention to that center. It seems very, very eerily close to self-inquiry. Is there any drawback in falling into that practice, and would that be sort of almost an equivalent? Because you are surrendering every thought, if you would, you're ignoring it to just gazing at the center.
It's a very good form of concentration, you know, and you know, to the extent that you can do it while you're doing everything else, or you know, in the world, and you know, it's good. I mean, that's one thing, right? So self-inquiry and surrender are to be done, right? Presumably at all times. But it's not just that, right? Self-inquiry and surrender differ from that practice in one other regard, which is something I referred to, I think, yesterday, the day before, which is that they are practices that continuously help you see the distinction between self and not self. So in surrender, you're continuously refining out what I thought was me and what is not me. So that's the process which leads to seeing through the illusion. Because the idea is that ultimately one has to penetrate into the heart of what you think you are, you know? And so how is that going to happen unless you're continuously engaged in the process of in surrender, seeing what you aren't, right? So again, in stillness or whatever, in peace, or these subtle states, right? You're still noticing, I'm not that. I'm not that. That means this, which I thought I was, I'm not, right? So that's a difference. Where if you're focusing on your third eye or something like that, you're not doing that, basically. That's the difference. Huh?
So, I mean, this morning when I was talking to you, you were telling me that in surrender, it's very easy to deceive yourself.
Yeah, easier.
Right? Easy to deceive yourself. And then when I went back and noticed, that's very true, because I don't think even when I practice surrender, I'm giving up my self-will continuously. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The closest I get to is accepting things as they are. And sometimes, occasionally noticing that when a thought comes or something happens, that the little I really didn't have much to do with it. So that's the closest I get to with my surrender practice. Right?
Well,
That
you're
whole
noticing that, at
giving
least.
up of that
It's
self-will
really hard.
is like not there yet, right?
Yeah.
When you say, just sit there and see what happens. Let's
Uh-huh.
see if something happens.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I have that faith yet to do
That's
that.
okay, that's okay,
To
it's
do-
okay,
to
that's
do
okay.
that. So
Yeah.
this is the closest I have gotten to the self, the surrender practice.
That's good. I mean, that's progress.
So-
More will come with time. But it's good. It's good. See, it's good at least you're noticing that, because again, I always say, right, like people often when beginning these practices, right, many people, not everybody, many people will think, oh, actually, this is really easy. Everything's so smooth, blah blah blah, right? And then further down the road, they're going to start noticing, oh my God, actually, I thought it was so smooth. I thought I was doing so much of it, and actually, I wasn't doing it at all. You know, like, you know, so like they start seeing and that's actually a sign of progress, because you're flying a little lower and you're seeing like the topography of means you're paying more attention actually, really. And it suddenly becomes like, oh my God, it's much harder than I thought.
Yes.
Yeah, which
Because
is true.
I thought, surrender is easier for me. It's like, no, I don't think I'm doing it right. For me to even make that statement is easier for me. Far from it.
Yeah.
But just one more
Sure,
thing.
sure. Uh-huh.
The other thing I also noticed that with this practice, right, between last year and this year, I think, remember last year I was telling you, it's impossible for me to do the practice while I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
In some cases, I'm able to do it now because I think my mind is convinced that, hey, if you can talk and drive,
Right.
or
True.
if you can, when you're talking to somebody, if you can think other thoughts,
Right.
then
Yeah.
you can also do this while you're doing that. It's like
Good analogy.
my mind is like figured this out. Let's see how well it practices it. So I just wanted to share.
No,
that.
that's good. That's good. I mean, look, it's interesting, right? Because I mean, even though I say, right, it should be ideally the forefront of your mind, the only thing you're doing, etc. Right? I mean, the reality is, this is, I think, the actual thing that happens, which is that people do it 10%, 20%, 30%, but then it slowly goes up, right? It's a background process, then it slowly becomes an equal process, then eventually becomes a foreground process, or becomes a foreground process sometimes, and background process other times, so it is like that, actually. But I mean, like what Geeta was saying, earlier, there have been, I always bring up this example, but it's not that persuasive because these instances are rare, but most of us have had some experience in our life where we do go into these modes where somehow we are entering an effortless state and something is being accomplished at a high level. Often it's things we're very experienced with, but it's accomplished at a high level seemingly effortlessly. These are like flow states or zone states, they call them. Athletes have them, musicians have them, anyone in a highly skilled profession sometimes has them, right? How do they happen? We don't know. They somehow happen, right? But the point is that in this state, highly creative, cognitively complex, difficult activities are carried out at a high level of performance, seemingly, subjectively, effortlessly. Which means that they can, in theory, be done like that, right? Which is evidence that, so that to the extent that one can take that in, that's evidence that one can let go, because the mind is capable of doing it without it, and in fact, is in fact doing it without it. Because again, right, I mean, again, right, to bring up one more time, right, the fact that your thoughts are coming to you. When you speak, you're not manufacturing the words one by one, right? You're not picking from all the possible words. The words are just coming, Thoughts are just coming, words are just coming, emotions are just coming. Really, everything is just coming, right? It's crazy. We have this, belief that in certain things we have to intervene, so to say, otherwise it won't happen. But the reality is, it's nonsensical if you really think about it. What does it mean to intervene? Like, who is putting the thought of intervention in our head? That I have to do this now. Like, where is that thought coming from? No, we didn't create that thought. Something told us at this moment, I have to do this thing now. You see? Whatever prompts that can also move your hand and move your feet and move your mouth and whatever it is, right? That is what's happening, actually. That is what's happening.
On the subject of the flow state,
Uh-huh.
just one follow question.
Mhm.
So, early on, when we began the session, so you said that much of the illusion is because, in fact, all of the illusion is because the thoughts and
Yeah,
there is some
basically.
activity and so
Mhm.
forth. But in a flow state, at least the way it is described in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, is that you have a very beautiful combination of movement and stillness.
Mhm.
It's like they give the analogy of open the tap and a small string of water. When you look at it from a distance, it appears still,
Mhm.
but then it's actually flowing.
Mhm.
So there's movement and stillness that coexist at the same time,
Mhm.
and that's what's happening in the prana in the system that
Mhm.
we call as the flow state.
Mhm.
So this seems to suggest, for example, in the Yoga Sutras, if there is no flow, if there is only stillness, it becomes stagnant. So that's how it is described, like tamasic state.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they talk about you need both. So at some level you are experiencing stillness, but behind it there is a flow as well. So it seems to suggest that perhaps movement is necessary.
I mean, I guess it depends what we're talking about exactly, right? Like certainly, like movement in one of these activities, like a musician, let's say, right? I mean, who goes into one of these states, right? They're moving, of course. They're playing the instrument. The question is, why is it that it seems to them subjectively like they're not playing it? Like the music is playing them, they might say, right? In this moment. Why? Why does that happen? You know, there are many explanations, like you could say, like certain balance of pranas in a certain way, you know, or, you know, it's effectively, it's a kind of samadhi in that moment, in that
Extreme
particular
focus.
activity. Extreme focus,
Focus,
exactly.
yeah.
The focus has gone beyond a
Extreme
certain
focus.
point and put the mind in that particular samadhi state, but only with respect to that activity, you see, only with respect to that particular activity, that particular moment. And so, yeah, definitely, there is something going beyond movement and stillness in that moment, for sure. And so, we're really trying, in some sense, to you know, get those flow states, but not with respect to music or surgery, but with respect to the practice, actually, you know,
All the
because
time.
all the time. Well, to see really, I mean, the point is, you see, when you're in that state as a result of surrender or inquiry, then that's a glimpse, essentially, of the self. That's a reflection of the self. And from that reflection, we want to, you know, if we continue to practice at the moment of that reflection, then if the attachments are weak enough, then there's a recognition that this is what I am. Being in the flow state all the time is, you know, if we think of the flow state as something separate, which is this special state, then it certainly cannot be maintained all the time. If, however, the flow state is recognized as a reflection of the self, that is, we are always in the flow state whether we know it or not, which is true, it's different, then that is the case. We are in flow, actually, right? That's the truth, right? Things are happening effortlessly, including the perception of effort. It's also happening effortlessly. It's part of the script, you know? There's a script written, and the script says, you're going to feel like a lot of effort right now. Just like an actor, you know? Like, again, right, it's like, you know, it's very much, you know, made up drama, right? Like, again, like in a, you know, in a TV show or something like that, someone is like wondering, like, oh, you know, what should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? You know? And they're like, I'm going to think about it carefully. But it's an actor reading a script, see? It's pretending to think about it. The decision is in the script. The thinking is totally fictional. That's an analogy, right? I love, I'm going to go back to this analogy because it's so perfect, right? You know, I love the analogy of, you know, like reading a novel in the first person. I've used this many times, like, you know, because it really is illustrative of what's going on. I mean, I think it's the best metaphor I can think of, more or less, right? Where, you know, if it's written in the first person, right, it's using the word I, right? And so someone like says, you know, I drove my car, you know, to CVS, right? Like, no one drove their car to CVS, right? There's a set of words on a page, right? And someone can say, like, I felt angry. No one felt angry, right? I was confused about the meaning of life. No one was confused, right? I went to, you know, read about Ramana Maharishi. Nobody read it. I did this practice of surrender. Nobody did this practice, right? I realized I'm just a set of characters in a book. You know, no one had that realization. Like, you see, the whole thing is fictional that way. So this is an analogy of what's going on, right? Our thoughts are creating the like a phantom, virtual life, basically, and it's prolonged because, you know, the thoughts like they extend each other. So it's like a fake currency being passed on, and as long as it keeps being accepted, it's like real, you know? Like the next thought accepts it. The next thought accepts the currency. And the currency is all centered around this I thing, basically, you know? I is the center of that. So this is something like what's going on. So we can't really, what are thoughts, what are feelings, what are experiences, you see? It seems like there are things happening, but actually a stream of thoughts that are telling us things are happening. And they're all dependent on this word I, which we again use all the time. We center our whole life around it, and you don't know what it is.
It's a practice question about surrender. I feel there's many textures of things that can be surrendered. So like, sometimes it's a very broad view of like the whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's much more narrow, like it's the sense of doership or the sense of meanness.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it could be, you know, like grosser forms of thought or just random stuff happening or even silence. So there's these, it's almost like it can be broad or narrow, external or internal, depending,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Is that dynamic nature, that's fine, we just have to keep surrendering whatever
Yes.
kind of, or should we be trying to get to more subtle? Is that
No,
natural?
when you surrender, subtler and subtler happens automatically.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, it's really like you're looking at a movie screen, right? Sometimes a movie screen could be showing you a huge vista of expansive mountains. Sometimes it could be showing you like something microscopically small. Like the image is taking the same amount of screen space, no matter what, right? That you should view it like that. The image is really the same. It's the same image on the same screen. The content of it is changing. That's all. And the point is, in surrender, to recognize whatever the content is, it's all irrelevant. Whatever it may be, big or small, it's still an image. It's equally an image, whatever the image may be of, you know?
Yeah.
Huh?
In the Ramana's discussions, he says that mind is incapable of finding the real I, right?
Yeah.
And he gives a lot of examples. Use the mind as a, you know, to take a thorn or use it like that.
Yeah.
And he said, you can do whatever you want. You will realize it only when the inner self is going to suck you out. Like
True. That's true.
Are we all kidding ourselves that we are going to realize?
Well, the way I see it, you know, it depends on your perspective, right? So it is true, right? You can say that the self or God ultimately makes the decision about who's going to realize, right? That's definitely the case. The mind cannot realize without grace. But, you know, what is the sign that this grace has been given? I think the answer is that when one has the prompting to pursue the practice.
You told me this before. Only a chosen few realize. Remember that question?
Yeah, right, exactly. And did I say the same thing about the practice?
So you said the same thing. You had to practice. Whoever has some desire are the chosen few.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Because that's the given way, generally speaking, that this process happens to happen. Of course, it could be the case that, you know, we don't know. There might be exceptions where God or the self simply, you know, snaps its fingers and bestows realization. But realization, after all, it's a fictional thing. Again, right? Remember that, right? It's just like in the novel. The character who doesn't know who he or she really is a fictional character, you know? And so their realization is also fictional. So, you know, in the novel, right? In the novel, you know, you might have, it might seem that you require a certain process. It might be a seeming cause and effect, right? Like, oh yeah, fire burns. But a novelist could also write fire is suddenly cold. Like, he doesn't have to follow this logic, right? They can do whatever they want, really.
There is no such thing as a realization. That's what Ramana himself said that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as realization after you obtain realization. The Buddhists say, don't throw away the boat until you've crossed the ocean. You know, so it's true. I mean, you know, you are that, you're already that, and it's true that the notion of I as a separate entity is wrong, right? So if you follow that logic, you are not ignorant currently. There's a fictional character who's fictionally ignorant, and it is that fictional character alone who could presumably recognize that fact. But that recognition is also fictional. That's definitely true. But as so long as one feels oneself to be a person, one has to play the game. That's the only option. Yeah, and all the sages have said this, basically. And so you go by the whole tradition, not only in Hinduism, but in all the mystical traditions of all time, right? Pretty much are saying similar, not exactly the same thing, but similar things.
Can I ask So you had mentioned the word grace.
Yeah.
And so we see in the scriptures that one of the ways in which we can be a recipient of grace is to be in the presence of someone who has realized. Like in the presence of Ramana Maharishi, for example.
Yeah.
Paul Brunton, he captures his experience.
Yeah.
Of, he had a long list of questions. All of them suddenly dissolved. As if they got answered.
Yeah.
The questions disappeared.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel as the importance of being around such people? Will it supercharge our?
Yeah, of course it'll help. There's no question it'll help. But at the same time, right? You can't have the expectation necessarily magic all the time. Like what was it? I think maybe you told me this. I can't remember. But like there's definitely an example somewhere where someone complains to Ramana that what was it? Vivekananda went to Ramakrishna, and Vivekananda had this sudden experience of, immediate enlightenment or something like that. And he said, well, why can't you give that to me? And Ramana said, are you Vivekananda? It's the rightness of the person, you see, that's what they're bringing to it, so.
But it can give.
But yes, 100%, of course,
No, but Paul Brunton and all, Ramana was waiting for him actually. Mahapariva only sent him there, finally. So that's what it is described. He went away, he didn't go. And all around India and come back, then he's waiting for you.
Yeah, some guru is waiting for you, only that is your guru. You go there. That's what
exactly.
Right, some guru is waiting for you all the time.
Yeah, you go there. Some guru is waiting or go south.
Oh really?
Some guru is waiting for you, you will find him. One astrologer, the astrologer intuition, he says.
Oh, interesting.
He says, you really do not go search for many people like that. One is completely waiting for you. And guru also will come to you.
Definitely.
Right? And they want you and you want it.
Yeah, definitely. No, it is helpful. Of course it's helpful. Definitely. But yeah, nevertheless, there's a ripening process that cannot be skipped, basically.
Is it like doing practice is normal charging and being in the presence of guru is fast charging?
Maybe, I don't know, it depends. I'm not sure you can give a rule like that.
Question I can understand.
Guru, that may be boost.
Right.
Temporary boost.
Yeah, using
Temporary
normal
boost.
USB, now your USB-C and full.
But they say satsang, that's what the meaning about satsang.
Some pointers, some clarity.
Nissangatvam,
You go from
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yes.
just some realized point.
Yes.
Yeah, some pointers they needed, right?
See, the
little
more-
bit pointer is enough for people, then you take it. That's
Yeah, exactly. See, the energy is there. The question again is each person's capacity to receive it. That's what it is, right? So, but yeah, I think generally speaking, of course, you could say it's helpful, definitely. But I think Swami Bodhananda actually had this funny, metaphor story about, of course they say if you go and go to the Ganges and bathe in it, right, your sins are washed away. But he says, oh yeah, your sins are washed away, but they go and sit in a nearby tree. And as soon as you leave the river, they come right back onto you. It's a little cynical, but so all these things I don't want to, of course, satsang and going to holy places and all of these things definitely are helpful. They definitely are helpful.
Better than going to a bar and drinking.
Yeah. But but at the same time, we have to keep our expectations realistic.
Because when you're there, we all can go on this
their
practice.
habit is gone.
Our old habits.
1 year gone. They can go back.
Yeah, that's how it is.
I
But
know.
better something than nothing. You see, it's not nothing. Actually, the seeds are being planted and they are being watered and they are growing.
Over 10
actually,
years, you really
yeah,
get something.
yeah, definitely, something is growing for sure, 100%.
Right. November nice, and then January again nice. Then afterwards we forget everything. Swami Godananda comes in November.
I have a question.
I have a Tell me.
question on technique.
Oh, sorry, hold on 1 second. Let me take her question and then I'll come back to you. Okay, 1 second.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So it's about surrender, right? So you mentioned that we put off the cards on judgment, right? And analysis, right?
Yes.
So like when I'm doing it all the time, like even now, right? You are saying something and my mind is actually interpreting that,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
So I'm not sure like if what is the right way here? Like how do I even like, stop the analysis, because it's like making sense of what you're saying, right?
So analysis, I mean, I would say a couple things. So one is, analysis is not quite the same as the judgment or evaluation, right? So understanding what I'm saying is different than saying it's good or bad. If that makes any sense,
Yeah.
right? Just you're just understanding what I'm saying. So, that's one thing. Second thing I would say is, right, that, again, it's, there's a difference between whatever faculty we have that feels like it's like deliberately thinking versus thoughts that seem to come, just arrive. Even though all thoughts arrive spontaneously, but to some extent we feel is wrongly, of course, but we feel like certain thoughts we generate, we think and we create them. We're wrong about that, but we feel that. So that feeling of like, I'm thinking, that feeling, that muscle, we're trying to relax and surrender. Despite that, when I speak or anybody speaks, your mind is involuntarily going to process those words. That kind of processing cannot be stopped and needn't be worried about. All you want to do is just disregard it, essentially, if you're in surrender. Your mind will take it in, don't worry. You will view it as, this is irrelevant, this is all mirage, basically. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm sorry, you had a question? Someone on Zoom?
Yeah, I had a question on technique. This is about surrender. I mean, I constantly find my mind is playing tricks on me. I don't know what that me is, but so for example, I say, okay, I have to ignore what's happening. Maybe it goes for a bit, and then immediately it wants to see what is being ignored. So to make sure that it is ignoring something. So to confirm that it is ignoring, then it wants to see what is being ignored, and I'm back in. Not ignoring really. How do I not do that?
One has to recognize that, if an object is blurry, that's sufficient to know that it's being ignored, right? It doesn't be ignored. See, the whole thing as a mass can be ignored, and that means essentially it fades into the background. Essentially, you're not paying attention to it, right? Just like there's so many things in your environment right now which you're not really paying attention to, right? So you don't need to examine each one to know that you're not paying attention to it. They might be there, sort of in the background, right? So similarly, you're just treating everything like that. You're withholding your attention in the same way so that everything is turned to the periphery, except your vigilance about the practice itself, and you're keeping your that sort of continuous withdrawing your attention, right? That very practice is what is in foreground. Everything else is in the background, and everything else essentially, it goes to the periphery. So you don't need to confirm that you're. There's no need to confirm that you're ignoring each thing specifically any more than you need to ignore things in the background of your view right now to confirm that they're in the background. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like to practice it, how it goes, but yes, it makes sense logically, absolutely.
I mean, another way of looking at it is, right, this is why these sort of different instructions are given, even though they're kind of all implying the same thing, right? Your willpower, again, don't use your willpower, don't use your, if you're not focusing on something, you're almost certainly not using your willpower on it too. So these two are twinned, right? So if you're keeping your willpower relaxed, pretty much you're most likely ignoring ignoring it, you know? Or another way of looking at it again is, if you're not treating something as real, then you're not going to use your willpower on it. It's another way of looking at it, right? So, you know, as long as you're not treating any specific objects as real, then you're going to be surrendering, because if they're not real, they're irrelevant. So again, right, if you're doing that, if you're doing any of those things, right, keeping your willpower down, treating it all as unreal, ignoring it, they kind of all imply each other. Even non-judgment or non-evaluation, they're all kind of in the same vein. Relaxing your thinking faculty, like I give these different instructions, but they're kind of all connected, really. You know, if you do one or two of them, they usually have to do the other three, basically.
They all come under the umbrella of
all come under the umbrella.
under surrender.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Could you define what you mean by real?
By real? Yeah, I mean, so it is what it purports to be, right? So, you know, like it's not an image, basically, right? So an image, there's an image of a cup of water, but it's not actual cup of water. Yeah, in that sense. So if everything was an image that way, so nothing had substance to it, how would you react, right? Or if you knew that this was all a hallucination. You had taken some very powerful psychedelic and you were having a giant hallucination. Like, how would you react? If you knew that, how would you then act? Would you be, yeah, I mean, you would know none of this is real, basically. That's the sense in which you would take it. Huh?
Yeah, I have one. So, when I'm doing self-inquiry practice, my mind is playing this trick that it knows all the answers, that I am not that, I am not that. So it's not allowing me to think because it tells me that, yeah, you know, it's not you, it's not you.
Yeah, but what are you then?
Yeah, and it again says that I know the answer, that I am not that, I'm not that. So
yeah, but that's not the answer. That's not the answer. That's not the answer. That's you know, I mean, I can say, like, you know, what is that curtain? Well, you know, it's not that wall, and it's not the sky, it's not a giraffe, you know, but that doesn't tell me what the curtain is, right? It's not enough to know that what it's not.
So it's something it's itself. Like all the mind is playing that, don't ask any question, it knows the answer. That
I mean, it knows the answer because it wants
How do you get out from that?
Well, I mean, look, stuff. When you're thinking in everyday life, right, aren't you using the word I?
Yes.
Right. And you're probably not using the word I, you know, even by your own logic, right, the logic of your mind anyway, right? You're saying, well, I know I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that. But I bet you when you use the word I in daily life, you imply that you are those things, right? So right there's a contradiction, right? Even living according, even challenging that, right, living according to the logic that you've discovered, supposedly, would automatically change a lot of things. Because, you know, here I am, you know, I need to, whatever, go to work, or I need to pay my bills, or I need to, whatever, brush my teeth, right? Because obviously, you know, I believe I'm the body, I believe I'm this person, I believe I have these responsibilities, I believe I have these hopes and dreams and desires and fears and blah, 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 you know, relationships.
So not just in practice, just live just use the practice by living.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's basically surrender. That's basically a kind of surrender practice if you do that. That helps anyway, for sure, yeah.
Akilesh, you have, even in self-inquiry, there are sort of two flavors, right? The who am I, and what you teach is where do I exist?
Right.
So could you comment on using one versus the other? And,
these are prompts.
And both questions are not meant to be, I mean, maybe the who am I is not even meant to be answered. In that sense, like it's more like it's not like you're expecting an answer, you're going into silence and looking.
Yes, you know? yes, exactly.
And the where do I exist also sort of you're looking.
Yes, same thing, exactly, that's exactly right.
But then the where do I exist seems to be a location type thing where, you know, the mind's saying, oh, okay, I'm located here, okay, I'm not that, so where am I? You know, so but we seem to jump between locations when you ask that question.
Yeah.
And who am I? Maybe you could say you're just going to a void where you before you renew the questions, you say, I can't find, you know, be empty and then come out. So you sort of perpetual dynamic emptiness, you know.
I mean, regardless, this is, I mean, you're right, all the questions have problems associated with them, right? They're all problematic. But essentially, right, the point is, however you put it, you have some kind of experience of I, or some knowledge, experience, call it what you want. And the point is, we're just trying to isolate what that is, right? However I put it, it's going to be a problem. I localize it, locate it, say what it is, say who it is, right? What am I? Who am I? How am I? How do I know how I am? How do I know who I am? How do I know that I am? Right? I can say it like hundreds of different ways, and they're all a little problematic, But the point is that no matter how you say it, it's fundamentally based in your ordinary, everyday, second to second, moment to moment, base experience. Yeah, and what is that? That's the point. Simple as that. What is that? How do we? That's the basic point. And all the different flavors will be there depending on the question, but the attentional movement is the point, because this is somehow there, and what is it? That's it.
And there's a third flavor of that, which is, I think Nisargadatta Maharaj used to have that, which is I am that. Be as you are.
That's interesting. So Nisargadatta says, right, essentially some variety of like rest is yourself. Okay. Now the way I see that is, it's never it's not my usual first preference instruction, because whatever you're resting as you know, is not you. It's a thought. If you rest as something, it's a thought. However, that said, right, his technique can still work, because what you're effectively doing is you're kind of surrendering essentially into that, okay, and it becomes like a kind of like a glass bottom of a drawer or something like that, okay, and you dissolve the other attachments by staying at this point, and then this will fall away too. So I mean, I like the idea of saying go further than that, because in my opinion, that protects that resting space better than to say rest here, because rest here suggests to me drop vigilance. If you drop vigilance, then attachments can invade again, and then you'll lose your concentration. But for some people that works. It's not wrong exactly. It's just slightly less preferred language. That's all.
So I find that technique sometimes puts me into the so-called notion of beingness and not doingness. And I can guard beingness by keeping thoughts away.
Yeah, sure. So
I'm just beingness.
It's a kind of surrender then, right? Yeah, it's a kind of surrender-ish sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. It's good to see. Basically, right, I mean, I have slightly preferred language, slightly preferred concepts, but fundamentally, right, again, the majority of the game is, can you break the attachments by withdrawing from them? That's 98% of what's going on. The last 2% is discernment. It's true, but if you get the 98%, the last 2% will come automatically. Just about, really, is the truth. Go ahead, huh?
So when I do this inquiry, I go by mostly where is I feeling why or why. Then I go look at the feeling rather than the. I'm not. I don't go into I'm not this. I don't.
Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, the feeling is correct.
But feeling is an object too.
See, when you go into the feeling, the point is, just because we lack the word for it, experience or knowledge, right? These are all problematic words. Whatever it is, you're looking for it, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's the point.
Where is I looking?
You're not resting on a feeling, but you're looking for it.
No, resting. Resting means it gets nervous. I get nervous.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
You're moving towards that, whatever that is. It's
See, I'll give you the example. See, when in the Udesha Sharam or Udesha Vandya,
English.
Right? So see what Ramana says is that there is feeling there. You are feeling. There is no feeling to feel the feeling.
Yeah.
Only feeling is there.
Yeah.
That's the gist of that slogan. Okay. So the feeling is eventually you are going to be feeling, right? Where is the feeling coming from? When I say I feeling, that's why that's why I was searching. I go back to the Upadesha Charam as my base, and that's where I extend.
Yes. Okay. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, right? Because the feeling he's talking about is not a normal feeling, right? Any normal feeling will be discarded as not that feeling. Right. The feeling, it's the feeling underneath that feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to extend the same topic, and again talk about the localization that Raj mentioned. So even in the Upanishads, they talk about where the I feeling is coming from. For example, I think the Narayana Suktam, it says, Ado nishtyapi tasyante nabhyam uparitishthati. Like if you take this hand like this,
thumb,
then the thumb resting on the Adam's apple, and this point in the heart is where, and it's the same distance as from the nabi to here. So that's where you're, and we see that in practice, right? When I introduce myself, I say I'm so and so, and I am so and so. So there is a feeling of I, that's a localization that comes from here. So is there a value in, like for example, when Raja asked about chakras earlier, so here the heart chakra, maybe the I is most felt in the heart chakra.
Well, I would say it's a good initial entry point. You see, because you're right. There's a natural sort of I feeling for a lot of people in this heart area. That's not the full I, but it's the entry point of the feeling. Because, you know, as many people have pointed out, and certainly Vedanta and Ramana too, that ego is a lot of things, but at primary base, it's a body ego. Body is the base of it, really. And probably the heart is probably the base of that even. So it's an entry point. But one should realize whatever is felt here is still a feeling. So I am feeling that, right? So obviously this feeling is not me. That makes sense? Yeah, it has to be the case. So,
but I think Ramana has, people asked, like Raj is asking, can you focus on the in between the eyebrows? Ramana didn't accept that. He said, when there is already a heart as a location, why do you want to focus in other place? That's the answer he gave.
It's a closer, right? I agree. It's a closer feeling.
I think Ramana spoke about the heart, and which you said ignore it, right?
I think the heart I think there's a couple of things going on. One is that, for a lot of people, okay, he's speaking to a wide audience. For a lot of people, they need something they can latch onto, right? Where do you start, right? So there is some kind of like rough I feeling here of some kind, okay? It may not be the ultimate I, it's not, but there's something. So that's something that people can hold on to as an initial start, you know? So I think that's what he was advising. At the same time, I think, you know, what he was pointing out is, you know, he's using the heart in two different ways. One is with this sort of rough initial I feeling. He's simultaneously using it as the self, basically. Because in the cave of the heart, as you descend, right, as you inquire into this initial feeling, the basic starting feeling, one goes in and finds the truth, which is the heart with a capital H, you know? So that's what I think is going on.
Yeah, but you know, every organ has got, according to Bhagavatam and everywhere, every organ is also has got a heart function, stomach function, stomach also has got heart. So every cell is like, everything is like a Mandukya Upanishad to oneself. So every cell is like that, you know. The heart also can function as stomach, stomach also can function as heart. So there is no such a thing as one heart. It's all the like embodiment of so many organs put together, like so many self things are put together and put in your body. That's all.
True.
But he says biological, isn't it biological?
Yeah, it's not biological.
Spiritual.
Yeah, see, basically, he's just pointing to the fact that experientially, like you said, right? Essentially, experientially, you know, most people will feel like, yeah, I'm here somehow. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, even though you're right, like cellularly, perhaps.
Because when you talk about the whole Vishnu or self or big self,
right?
Then the big self is made of container of all individual entity, and then there's no question of this heart, that heart. All have got heart also.
Correct.
All have got stomach also. All everything.
Correct.
This is how it is interpreted. When you are really looking, there are various ways of focusing, like head to toe, toe to head. You focus. You know, when you each one by one, everything is called angam. It's not called one individual organ.
Yeah, true. But do you see what I'm getting at? Like, there's for the ordinary person, there's a general sense of I here.
Yeah.
Even though that has to be gone beyond. But that's all that Ramana is pointing out. You know, even though what you're saying is also true from a different perspective.
No, but it is. You know? It's kind of finally it's a feeling. The feeling and all related to heart.
Yeah.
And then that's why he is pointing out to heart. Maybe
because he basically.
We feel if you cry or if you're happy. Where you feel, or you are angry, everything you feel only in the heart.
Right.
So then this feeling of this also is divine feeling is also a feeling. Right?
Exactly. So people are holding on to that as an initial foothold, essentially. You know, just like Ramana has said, right? If you can't do anything else, if you can't understand the self-inquiry instructions, even mechanically saying I is something, because there's something very people may not understand it, but there's something that's being touched, even very vaguely, like they don't understand it at all, but still, like it's still obviously touched. There's some bell that's ringing somewhere, and if you keep just saying the word even, right, that bell will slowly become louder and louder and louder, and it'll become easier to identify.
Sadhu, one of the disciples, describes it. When you say orange, you think of orange. When you say anything, the name, whatever name, if you know, you associate it with that object. Whenever you say I, subconsciously you go into the self I.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you say. It's in Sadhu description of why do you have to say I?
Yeah. I mean, another way of looking at it, by the way, the same thing, right? A similar thing is, if I ask you right now, like, okay, are you aware of hearing my voice? You say yes. Okay. Where did you go to consult to find that out? You went somewhere to find that out. Like, yeah, am I aware of the voice? Yeah, I am. Like somehow the mind went somewhere.
Yeah.
Because the sentence is, am I aware, right, of it? The answer is yes, I am aware of the voice. So, interesting. So there's an intuitive knowledge somewhere in there of where to go,
Very subtle.
Very subtle, exactly.
I have a small clarification.
Sure.
Earlier you mentioned about being vigilant. But the word vigilant, it brings me a sense of doership of the mind.
Yeah, well, see, the practices are going to involve doership. So, you have doership. You have the illusion of doership, let's just say, right? So the question is, you feel like you're the doer. Okay, it may not be true. It isn't true, but you feel like it. So whoever feels like they're the doer, for them, a practice is prescribed like how you should use this sense of doing. Like this willpower that you feel like you have, use it on the practice. So it can't be helped. It is going to feel like a doing, and the end of that will be the dissolution of that feeling. In fact, it will not be more than the dissolution of that feeling. It will be the retroactive revelation that the doing never existed. But for the moment, you have that. You can't skip and drop doing, because dropping doing would be another doing. It would just be the wrong kind of doing. That makes sense.
Yeah. Does this go back to the same point that you use your will to do only one thing, which is be vigilant?
Yes, same point.
Is vigilant the same as what would be ekagrata then, in a certain sense? I think the way you explained it once was okay. That alertness to.
Dharana, like what the Yoga Sutras.
You have a question?
Yeah. So there's been a question the last year or two that really resonates with me. And Ramana talks about it in Nanya, Who Am I?
Mm-hmm.
The origin from where thoughts arise from, or find from where the first thought arises. Mm-hmm. And what I've been doing sometimes is really trying to focus on where does the first like arising come from, mm-hmm. and anything I land on isn't it, because it's a product of whatever the source is. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to find this first subtle kind of arising, and then answers come up, but they're actually not it. They come from somewhere. So it's this constant kind of tackle the origin, never getting there, but like trying to get to that source, and it gets really subtle. And I also know it's never it, and it just keeps me going into it.
That's good.
So that is something.
I mean, it sounds like a variety of self-inquiry, basically. And if your mind is getting subtler and things are getting stiller, it seems like the right direction. And exactly, it feels like you never get there, but the reality is, as you're doing it, again, the attachments are getting weaker. And eventually, when they get weak enough, you'll start punching through.
And any seeming answer is not the source, because the source isn't a thing.
Correct. Correct. Exactly.
Mm.
It cannot possibly be an answer in the ordinary sense.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean there's no answer. There's an answer of a certain kind. It's just not an answer that the mind can fit into its little agenda, basically. So it is.
So I've for the whole past year I've been listening to Premanand Maharaj Ji also. So he says one technique is just keep on chanting Radha 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 back of your mind. Whatever you are doing, just keep chanting that, keep chanting that. And yesterday we were just discussing about self-inquiry and all. I was finding this very similar technique, because here also we have to keep doing it, this practice, whatever we are doing, right? In the mind, in the back of the mind. And what I was hearing from Premanand Maharaj was just chanting Radha, 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 Radha all the time in your heart or in your mind. So, so the question is japa not same as self-inquiry then?
Well, no, it's different because well, so first of all, right, one big difference is you're saying chant in the background, right? But inquiry and surrender ideally to be done in the foreground as the main activity, as the only activity, really. And other things, so that's a big difference.
While doing any activity,
well, other activities will happen or not happen as they will. Right? That's the technical stance of inquiry or surrender.
That's a good.
But it's a good auxiliary tool to silence the mind.
Yeah, it can be an auxiliary tool to silence the mind, and you're right that you can do it all the time. In the background, it's not, so in that sense, it's not a bad thing. But A, it's a background, not a foreground thing. B, at most, it's concentration. It doesn't give again discernment. You see. The distinction between I and not I, that is the key thing that both surrender and inquiry do. But nothing else does.
Japa just takes away all your mind from at least the attachments. From the thoughts attachments.
If you did,
there is a discernment which is different.
If you did the japa as the pure foreground activity, nothing else mattered, then it would be close to surrender. Not exactly the same thing, but it would be closer. Still not exactly surrender. I'll give you an example I gave I think last year anyway, but I'll give it again, which is very interesting. So there's a very famous Buddhist monk named Hakuin in like the 17th century or something like that, and he wrote some pieces criticizing some of the other Buddhists of his time. Some of them were the Pure Land Buddhists who recommended purely, essentially, japa chanting. They said, chant this japa, and when you die, you'll go to the pure land of the Buddhas, and there you'll become enlightened. Okay. And Hakuin said, no, that's wrong. You have to confront the koans, like essentially self-inquiry. You have to break your head against them. This is the only way. This mechanical mantra chanting is insufficient. It's wrong advice. Okay. However, he said, next breath he said, still, he said, it's true, there's one guy who really was ultra devoted to this mantra chanting practice. And he really kept it as this sole foreground activity in his mind the whole time, And he said that person was led to Zen. So meaning he also got it. Because any practice followed with that much devotion, gets you something. It's true. Even if it's not the exact ideal practice. So, he gave that exception.
So
Hanuman is like that.
Exactly.
So the conclusion here, if I can point it out, you keep self-inquiry as your first priority in life, or whatever.
That's right.
And then whatever you're doing, doership you're doing, that is on the background.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
And what Maharaji said, that do whatever is your first priority and chanting as your background.
Yes, exactly.
So you are saying opposite.
I think Ramana said something like, in response to some question being like, if you're doing your work, you give 19/20ths of it to, the spiritual, and 1/20th portion you can give to the work.
You can always say, you won't be able to focus inquiry all the time. So you need some backup. That's Swami Bodhananda says the same thing. Backup is basically whatever makes you go in that direction, like japam, whatever makes you comfortable. You do that so you don't go away in some other bar and start drinking. That's not the idea. The idea is so that you are related to the same topic, and you cannot always focus on self-inquiry. You go in this.
Some other practices.
When you deviate, then you do that, then you come back to self-inquiry.
Exactly.
That's what Swami Bodhananda always says.
Yeah, 100%. That's right. It's exactly a very good point, right? So again, right, you cannot sustain surrender and self-inquiry, very demanding, right? Again, there's many other things you can do. If you can stay somewhere in the spiritual ladder at all times, 100% doing a mantra is way better than nothing. So, anything that orients you in that direction is going to be better than nothing, definitely. Okay, let's wrap this up with like 5 more minutes of meditation together. right, everyone. Thank you so much, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.